Hello, 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 everyone. Thank you for coming in today to another Voice Acting Club guest Q&A. For those of you who've never been part of one of these before, we have a very special guest Q&A live feed channel, a text channel right above the voice channels. And in there, you will be able to post your questions. And be sure, please, to post them to precede every question with one of our special Q emojis so that our guests can pick them out from amongst the crowd. And our guest today, despite what it might appear, is not Statler from the Muppets. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you. And in the meantime, all you guys in the audience, go ahead and start writing those questions.
Yeah, so my name is Nazeeh Tarsha. I happen to be a voice actor slash director slash talent coordinator. In terms of the acting side of things, some of my more notable roles include Raihan from Pokemon Twilight Wings. I also play Lex in Fire Emblem Heroes. I'm in One Piece as the character Zio, Attack on Titan as the character Uwe Rice, and just kind of like have other like bits and pieces scattered on the resume with like other notable titles, like, you know, additional stuff for My Hero Academia or Dragon Ball Super, you know, things like that. But in terms of the production side of things, I happen to be the talent coordinator as well as one of the voice directors over at Okratron 5000. You may or may not know that as the studio responsible for bringing together the Dragon Ball series for Funimation, or we work on a plethora of video games as well, ranging from various Bandai Namco titles to things with high res, where I happen to deal with a lot more of the voice directing for their games. So Smite, Paladins, kind of an ear on the wall for Rogue Company as well. But yeah, that's more or less what I do. And yeah, I guess I can just go over and kind of like see this. Let me scroll and see if I have any of these questions. But cool. Between Los Angeles and Texas, which do you find you've needed a home studio for more? Los Angeles for sure for me. In terms of myself, I am located and based out of Dallas. Prior to the pandemic occurring, traveling was something that I was more than willing to do and had agreements with left and right with various studios. But in terms of the current climate, you know, depending on where you're based off of, you're now more likely to be considered regardless of your location based, so that it kind of doesn't matter. Obviously, you still need to get a foot in the door, but for sure, I've had a lot of LA opportunities that I don't think I would have necessarily been given had it not been that, you know, things are you know, in a remote recording climate. Did you get any backlash from not doing a British accent for Raihan, considering the fact that the Galar region is based on the UK? No, I actually didn't receive any sort of backlash at all. Luckily for me, despite only having like anywhere between 2 to 5 sentences in the in that episodic, it seemed like a lot of people were very, very receptive to my voice and just my portrayal of the character. I know there are a couple of people that would have liked to have heard a British or just, you know, maybe something a little different. But at the end of the day, I didn't really receive anything huge regarding it. I also like to be a little more humble about things on this front. And like I said, I know I only, you know, as big as the character is in terms of the portrayal, you know, it was only a handful of sentences. And while it does mean the world to me and everything, I don't think there's necessarily much there to critique per se. So not really much going on there. That being said, there was definitely a lot of positive reception toward me being a Middle Eastern actor, being given the opportunity to voice that, and sort of just, you know, the rise in the current ethnic climate and being able to have folks of all sorts and types being able to voice characters of all types. So there's a lot of positive reception, not really any backlash. How has the addition of the various production hats you wear to your workload affect your career? So there is a lot of things. There's a lot of burnout, first and foremost. Trying to juggle the various hats is something that is really, really difficult to do. Some weeks more than others. It kind of just depends on how much the workload is between deadlines on the production side of things and how lucky I am in terms of booking on a certain week. You know, some weeks I'm definitely needed more than others. Others, it's pretty chill on both fronts, and I get to kind of just kick back and relax. But yeah, the workload, it really does vary. At my most burned out, we were working on, I want to say it was about 15 to 16 separate projects, in which I had to just kind of keep track of everything, do this coordinating of the talent, helping out with the direction, and then also just trying to juggle my own things in between. So there'd be points where it's like I go into work from anywhere like 8 to 9 a.m. and there were some nights where I wouldn't come back until 11:30 p.m. just because of how busy those deadlines were. But it's not always like that. It just entirely depends on what aspect of the industry is kind of hitting our studio. So, for instance, we do work with Funimation a lot in terms of producing various anime, and sometimes we end up with simuldubs. So those deadlines, depending on the number of actors needed as well, and just the size of the cast, and all the logistics that goes around with that, I might find myself getting a little more burned out more quickly because I have to be on top of that on top of just keeping the track on everything else. But yeah, workload, I would say it's affected it quite heavily, and it's definitely very difficult to manage at some points, but you got to kind of just roll with the punches, crack another Red Bull, and just make it through the night. But yeah, I hope that answered that question. Let's see. How much did you spend on all of your equipment on voice acting? Okay, so in terms of that, I'm going to give you my own personal home studio, of course, because since I do work at Okatron 5000, I do have the added benefit of being able to use the facilities so long as it doesn't interfere with the day job. However, in terms of my own things, so in terms of the mics alone, I currently own a TLM 103 and a Sennheiser 416, so that they're around $1,000 mics each. And then in terms of the audio interfaces, I have a couple that are lying around in case things hit the fan and I need to do some routing things. And equipment likes to be finicky. But between like the Apollo Twin, I have an Audient MK2 ID14, the most recent thing that came out. So those interfaces together probably hit another maybe 1,000. And so that's just on the front of the hardware itself. That's not including, of course, my speakers, personal computer, and the booth itself that it's a walk-in closet, but it is a walk-in closet that I hired a company to make some custom panels for me. So it's GIK Acoustics, GIK Acoustics. I think they're both based out of Atlanta. You can get as many panels as you want in terms of acoustics, bass trap, stuff like that. And so I would say total in terms of my own particular setup, if I'm not looking at the things that I purchased just for fun, and just like the bare necessities of what someone presumes a working professional has, it probably hit around $4,000, probably anywhere between 3 to 4. That all being said, though, this industry, I do want to point out, there is a stigma in which a person needs to be having a TLM 103 or a 416, and that's just really brand name recognition more than anything else. There are absolutely other actors who have really, really good sounding setups, and the mics are only like a couple $100. So you really don't need to break the bank. More important than the actual mic itself, I think a really, really good booth and setup is the key to that, and kind of finagling your way around that. Just because you can have a $1,300 mic, but if you're recording in a place akin to that of a hotel bathroom, it doesn't matter. It's going to sound terrible. So I would say if you are a person who is looking to invest in current equipment, go ahead and the biggest thing will be make sure your space is treated. So long as the space is sounding good, not too many reflections and not too many just empty spaces in there, then I think you can get away, honestly, with just using something akin to that of a Rode NT1A, a Blue Bluebird, things of that nature. Not everyone can afford these things, so and studios are well aware of that. Let's see. I realize I went onto like a separate rant there, but I just didn't want anyone to hear me saying that I spent anywhere between 3 to 4 with my computer upgrade, possibly even more, K, and thinking that that's the barrier of entry. It absolutely is not. And it is something that I piecewise grew the more I was booking, the more that the needs were being asked of me. That's when I started upgrading the entire rig, and that's why it currently costs the amount that it costs. Let's see, next question. Do you find that working as a talent coordinator has helped you with your own VO work in terms of being aware of what casting directors tend to look for? What's one piece of advice you'd give to actors in terms of improving their auditions? Oh, yeah. So I am not going to lie. I am 10,000% cognizant of the fact that me being a talent coordinator has helped me get into the eyes of other folks in the industry. Otherwise, it would have been a little bit of a harder crawl. That's not to say that I may not have had that. I wouldn't be where I am today. It would have maybe taken longer. Before I was a talent coordinator, I was already an established actor. I have a BFA in theater acting. And I was already getting a semi-steady stream of work. So that was already in the works. But in terms of making the connections with the various actors, the various directors, the various agencies that are located kind of throughout the states, but mainly in LA, as well as here in Texas, actually. I definitely, it helped for me to build a working relationship where others were able to view me as a professional. And, I kind of just worked around that while also trying to further word of my own acting as well. So yeah, being a talent coordinator absolutely helped me in terms of that front. In terms of being a talent coordinator helping in terms of what casting directors tend to look for, I wouldn't say that it's the talent coordination that really helped. It was more that I was able to sit in on the production side of things and see what it is that hired professionals were doing behind the mic. So if we look at, for instance, anime dubbing, we have a lot of talented actors that come through those doors. And I've had the opportunity to, sit in on various sessions and just kind of see what it is that separated a just fully green amateur from one of the pros, and kind of seeing just the level of energy that they bring to a role. Every now and then, I obviously, being an actor, I would submit auditions for things through our studio as well that other clients would pick the actors for. And seeing the actors that they finally chose, and then being able to see the difference between what it is that I submitted versus what it is that booked the role. And you don't have to be a talent coordinator to do that either. I do think there is value in general, if you know of a particular role that you auditioned for, keeping an eye on the product and seeing it in the final release, being able to objectively listen to that product and saying, oh, that's what they went with. Okay, yeah, I totally didn't do what they wanted. Or you might find a revelation of, that's near damn what I did, but it's fine. At the end of the day, you never know what inches out one actor over the other. No way to truly tell that. So, but being in the talent coordinator position and just also being on the directing side of things now, there is definitely a lot of valuable information that I've been able to, put in my back pocket from just watching my peers and what they do. And then in terms of an advice that I give to actors in terms of improving their auditions, I've got a couple. So one would be to, I would say, go with your instincts. There are a lot of folks where they will submit audition after audition and tell me that, they submit exactly what it is that the person was looking for, but the person they cast had an entirely different view or a different approach to the character that sounded nothing like the description that the audition side provided. And that's the thing. A lot of the times people in casting have a vague idea of what they want, but no one is ever so surefire that they would that they can't be swayed away from that original vision. So take an audition side, and this doesn't have to be for everything, but if you look at an audition side and you see the parameters that they provide and you're able to hit that, however, the side happens to provide a picture and you say to yourself, I see what they're going for, but I think this other idea that I have would go perfect on this character, this picture that I'm looking at. So to that, I would say, give 2 takes, 1 take giving them what they want, and give that second take being your instinct, because you really never know if they all of a sudden hear that second take and say, oh, that's actually, I like that so much better. We're going to cast that. And then the second piece of advice that I would have, because I know I said I had 2, is be wary of your setup. If you have too much noise going on in the background, it's going to hurt you, because it just shows that your setup isn't as treated as you would like it to be, or there's just something hindering. And that's really more so in today's climate where home studios are being used as a lot of final products. Now, that's not to say that you should go and strip silence every single bit between lines, but you want to just work to try and find that nice middle ground in your own audio to where, okay, there's a little bit of background noise, but that is something that can absolutely be taken away by the production side of the things, and your voice sounds crystal clear, lines sound great. So be mindful of your setup would be the second thing. Let's see. A lot of VAs hear certain common advice for demos and auditions: focus on the acting, lead in with your natural voice, etc. But what might be one piece of advice you think isn't given enough? Let's see. I think I would piggyback on the going with your instincts. A lot of folks, I think, they end up falling into the trap of assuming they know what assuming they know what a director wants, or like seeing, oh, this side is, let's pretend it's for anime. Oh, this anime side is just this stereotype that exists, so I'm going to make myself sound like this. But like I said, you really never know what it is that a director is looking for. And at the end of the day, anybody can be swayed, given that you give a damn good performance. So I would say going with your instinct is a really big thing. Those other common advice in terms of the auditions, focusing on the acting, leading in with your natural voice. I do think there's a bit of subjectivity that exists within this industry. For instance, there's a lot of times that people will say, do a front slate, so slate in the beginning of the audition, and do it with your natural voice, and then go into the voice of the character. And the idea behind that is, oh, they can hear 2 voices. They hear your natural voice and they hear the character. But then there are also just others where it's like, oh no, slate at the end, because the only thing the casting director is really looking for right now is they just want to hear that character. There is no right answer. I can tell you that my personal preference in those things is like, I prefer tail slates, just get into the meat of the thing. And if you do a slate, I personally prefer staying in the character. But it's even I deviate from my own preference. It just depends on the flavor of the day. I guess another advice that I would give though, I don't think is really, actually I do think it's given quite a bit, but they just don't want to listen, is take classes, man. Get a theater class, take an improv class. Voice acting has the word acting in it. There is more than just to being able to do zany, cartoony voices. There is an element in there where performance is not necessarily something that's inherent to every actor out there, and some need to work on it more than others. So be objective, know that you have something to work on, and if you do, work on it. Let's see. What kind of hats do you wear to your productions? Baseball, 10-gallon, trilby. I personally prefer Kangol hats. I happen to like those sort of like golf caps. But those are the sorts of hats that I personally prefer to wear. Let's see. How old did you start voice acting and why? I started so professionally speaking, I technically started in 2016. So what am I now? I'm 28 in 2021. So 23, 24 years old is when I started, I guess. But in terms of like getting my degree and everything, like just the entire world of acting wasn't something that I went into until I hit the age of 20 or 21. I wasn't somebody who grew up as a performer. I wasn't somebody who had any sort of extracurriculars in drama. I was very much so just a dude that was brought up by Middle Eastern parents who had a strict sort of focus on the maths and sciences. I happened to be good at that. Everyone thought I'd be an engineer. I went to college. I absolutely hated it. Ended up taking a acting for non-majors class, loved it so much that I said, all right, I'm going to audition and try to get into the main thing. And that's kind of how that ended up going. But the way the voice acting started, because that was for theater. That was really my first foray into acting. The way I got into voice was that I am a 5'6", 215-pound dude. So at the end of the day, I'm not going to get lead roles in camera, in the very least. And in theater, you're more likely to get these charactery things because, I'm just a lot of it is very dependent on physical appearance. Think people are being much better about that in today's climate. However, as we already know, everyone in not every doctor in real life looks like every doctor in Grey's Anatomy. So because of that, I ended up kind of thinking about just all the media that I used to consume and being like, wait a second, voice acting is a form of acting. And I started delving more into that world, trying to find a way to merge my theater background into getting into voice acting. Took a couple of personal classes here and there, and that was kind of my start. So yeah, I started voice acting because I wasn't limited by my physical appearance, and I sound nowhere like I look, or at least so I think. I've had a friend who jokingly was just like, wait, you're fat? You don't sound fat. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. Let's see. Walk-in closet squad. Yes. That's just, look, by all means, if you have the money to spend on a booth, and that's what you want to do, go for it. But not every single person has a few $1,000s to blow. So you do what you can. When it comes to getting on the radar of this or that studio, whether local or remote, oftentimes I found you find yourself running into a lot of impersonal contact forms and studio info email addresses. Has this kind of cold calling ever been effective for you, or do you have other strategies of getting your material in front of the right people? It's hard for me to answer that question because there isn't necessarily, as much as we hate to hear it, there really is no one way. It is such a finicky field to pursue where I can tell you how I ended up getting in. And that way is completely different to how someone else may have gotten in. So I would say, because I still myself, despite having my agents and everything, I'll still try cold calling, just sending out an email to a .info or at contact or whatever. And every now and then I do get a response. But it's definitely a much harder sell the greener you are in the industry. I will at least be able to say that. folks like to see something on the resume. If you are a brand new person, saying that you're represented by someone like Atlas, for instance, will automatically put like a perk their ears up and say, "Oh, I've never heard of this person at all. And they have no credits, but they're repped. Okay, let's look at them." That could very well be the case for some people. So it kind of varies on from person to person. It kind of varies on how effective your email writing is. Also, there are some folks that kind of go on, and it's like, look, nobody has time to read a 20-page essay. Sometimes all you need to send to a studio is, "Hey there, my name is so and so. I'd appreciate consideration for your studio. Here are my resume and reels. Thanks so much for your consideration." Period. Like, keep it nice, short, simple, sweet. You don't have to tell people like your life's journey and what brought you here. But yeah, I think success rate kind of just varies based off of the individual. In terms of myself, I will admit I definitely got a little more success the second I had a few notable credits to my resume, and from there, it's just like, it's sort of that idea of work begets work. So it's all a matter of playing your cards right and kind of feeling all that out. And in terms of strategies of getting material in front of the right people, the classes are really the main thing that I know of. And even then, they might not necessarily work. It sucks to hear, but it's true. You have some folks who spend thousands of dollars on taking the same classes over and over, and they hit a wall. You have other folks who end up taking one class, impress some teacher so much that all of a sudden their name starts getting spread around. That also happens. And at that point, that's where it sort of piggybacks on what I said earlier. Be objective about the quality of your work. Listen to the peers. Listen to those around you. And, make sure that you know what you need to work on in order to impress those people when you take those classes, when you do those one-on-ones, when you happen to find yourself at a cocktail party once this COVID stuff is over, of course. So yeah, just work on yourself, work on your craft. That's I'll be saying that a lot. And like I said, it sucks to hear because you see so many people who seemingly bounce out of nowhere into what some folks would consider stardom. But also, you can't judge a person's journey based off of what you see, because the person who sprang out of nowhere, for all you know, was actually pursuing this career for 11 years. And the only reason you don't know that is because they don't put the failures. They don't show the past. You only see the highlight reel on Twitter, So yeah, be objective, be kind, work on your craft. Let's see. What percentage of time behind the mic have you been spending versus all the other work you need to do? I would say it's definitely an uneven balance toward the production side. If I had to give a percentage, it'd probably be something like 70-30, just because, even if I'm like super busy and I have like a really good week where I have, let's say, 6 hours of recording or something, at the end of the day, it's still like a 24/7 job where I need to contact actors and do things and make sure productions are going well and deadlines are being hit. So yeah, it doesn't matter how much recording I have, there is always going to be more work to be done on the production side. And also, there are a lot of times where I'll be in the middle of recording and on my phone trying to handle some more emails or like putting out fires for my coworkers or something. So that is the fact. Production just sucks your soul and your time. Let's see. Hi, I'm a native Spanish speaker, but I think the question can apply. I've been told that I should first learn my native language correctly to improve my performances. How true is this? Truthfully, I'm not actually entirely sure. I think that there is definitely validity to that, but it's not something that I can necessarily attest to, because it's not something that I personally have to deal with. While yes, I am Middle Eastern and both my parents are, just flat out 100% Middle Eastern, I was born and raised here. So everything that I've done has been in my native, you know, born tongue, which is English. I do speak Arabic, and I'm definitely absolutely conversational in that. But yeah, I really don't know how to properly answer that question other than saying I think there is definitely validity in learning how to act in your own language, but it kind of just varies, really. I feel like there are people that would have success one way or the other. Sorry, I can't really answer that one. For beginners, how much audio work / knowledge is expected? How well should the audio be cleaned up? Use of background obvious, etc. I don't think I don't think you're expected to be able to do too much. I think what you need to be able to do is being able to just do very, very light, noise removal, if any at all, and maybe some light compression. You can easily look up a video and learn how to do that in about like 15 minutes. It's really not too bad. But I would say for beginners, one thing that is expected of you is for you to know how to use your own rig. In this day and age, there are so many different softwares, computers, brands. You have PC users, you have Macs, you have Linux users, and across that, you have people using Adobe Audition, Audacity, Pro Tools, Reaper, GarageBand. Like, there are just way too many things for the engineer on a production to be able to just flat out know what is wrong with your rig if a complication occurs. They can try troubleshooting, but of course, troubleshooting is time consuming and eats into the time that was allotted strictly for recording. So what I would say is the main thing expected for beginners, and this is really because of today's, you kind of adapt to the current market. It's learn your computer, learn your rig, learn the nuances. I ended up running across this actually a couple times this week from the director side of things, which is some actors have never recorded a backup before. And so when they try to record a backup, all of a sudden there's audio interference between the mic being used on the DAW versus the mic being used on Source Connect. And this is on a Windows computer. Luckily, I'm a Windows user and I've ran into that, so I knew how to solve it. But if it was just my engineer who was trying to solve it, he wouldn't have known what to do. So try and iron out the kinks of what you would need to do to be able to solve your problems. Learn about your audio drivers and kind of what things you may end up running against, given your specific computer. I hope that answered that question. But yeah, nothing that a short YouTube tutorial that you could look up, just because voiceover is not intensive. Luckily, it really is just a matter of knowing how to do light compression, noise removal. That's it, and not overdoing it. That's really kind of what it boils down to at its core. You don't sound fat, squad unite. Hell yeah. Let's see. Do you have any Japanese voice actors that you like or respect? I mean, off the top of my head, because I am being put on the spot, I can't name them by names, but the answer is absolutely yes. There is no side of that equation, whether it's foreign, in-state, and if in that case you actually meant more like Japanese American or that too. Yeah, no, totally. Just there are a lot that I respect, and I might not even know their names if we're just talking about the foreign side of things. But yeah, on the spot, I definitely can't give you names. Let's see. I'm 15 and I want to study in that field of sound designing, voiceovers, and voice acting. Do you think I should do this for a living? I can't answer that. And the reason I say that is because I went to college in theater acting, and of my graduating class, there are I can probably count on one hand the number of us who are actually professionally working. And that's just the sad truth of it. It's a very, very brutal field. It's very, very difficult to break in. And once you break in, I don't think there's ever going to be a level of satisfaction that will ever take away the hunger that you might feel as an actor. Even if you are consistent, you might say, I want lead roles. If you have lead roles, you might say, I want different roles. Like it never ends. But veering back away from that and more into the general, whether you should do this for a living or not entirely depends on your resolve, your willingness to learn, your willingness to adapt, your willingness to go to Walmart at 2 a.m. to find clearance subs, because you probably won't be able to afford much. And that's if you go full time at it and just go ham. Now, if you're a person who is, you know, you like the safety net, but you want to start merging that so that the scale tips in the favor of doing it solely for a living rather than working as, a sort of corporate job, then you're going to need to know whether or not when you can make that jump, whether you're willing to do that risk, knowing that there is just no surefire guarantee that you are going to make it. And the other thing is there are also droughts in the field, of course. So you may find yourself having a phenomenal month or a phenomenal year, and then you're just, you're just dry. All the work is dried up, and you're like, what happened? And the answer is nothing. The industry is just cruel. So I would say if you should do this for a living, you need to just kind of judge it as you go on. And the other thing I do want to say to those who are contemplating doing this for a living, there is absolutely nothing wrong with taking a break. I see way too many actors hitting their heads against walls, trying to just stay at it. Nothing is happening. They're still trying to stay at it. And at the end of the day, it just creates much more mental frustration. It makes you spiral into a depression that just feels very difficult to get out of. And at the end of the day, you are able to just stop, just take a break. Saying that you want to leave your pursuit to recoup yourself mentally, to take care of yourself, nothing wrong with that. Please take the breaks that you need to. This industry is not going anywhere. You may say to yourself, oh, but the time that I spend taking a break means that other people can take my spot. Look, there are so many different people, so many different voices. You have no control over that. The one thing you have control over is yourself. And at the end of the day, you need to take care of yourself. So do what you need to in order to make that happen. Let's see. Yeah, there's definitely stigma about anime actors not being considered real actors just because they don't think anime is a thing. But at the end of the day, they people just don't like to acknowledge that despite their perception of the medium, at the end of the day, it's not something that everybody can do and is thus a skill that people have to learn to get. Some get it easier than others, but it's kind of like, with theater, you can drop any sort of normal person onto a stage and they're going to sound stiff. This is acting to them. And it's just, it's a thing that you learn to do. Like I said, comes more naturally to others, but that stigma in anime, I think, is such BS, just because of the fact that it's a skill. And at the end of the day, if there are that many fans for the medium, why do you have to have your snobby perception turning your nose down at it? So I don't know. But things are getting better for the anime actors and for just the voiceover field in general. Funny enough, voiceover itself is just people in theater and camera look down on it. But then it was just like, oh no, like acting is acting. It doesn't matter what medium you do. It's all acting. And there is absolutely no reason to make another creative feel bad about their pursuit. That's just being a terrible human being. Let's see. Can't tell if there's questions or just more general chat. Give me 1 second. We just kind of read. Oh man, my dreams have been crushed. No, don't let your dreams be crushed. At the end of the day, that's the other thing. Actually, I know that's not a question, that's more just like a comment, and it may have been sarcastic. But legitimately, there are people that make decisions based off of others' perception of things. And when I first started in college and I made the switch to enter acting, I didn't necessarily have the full support of my parents for no other reason than they just weren't familiar. They were definitely a little more accepting than I thought they would be, but it was still like there would be occasional conversations that would emerge. Would be like, "So you gonna go back to engineering?" It's like, "Nah, I'm good." And my best friend's parents, who are essentially my parents by that point too, they all sat me aside and told me I'm making a mistake with my life. I absolutely shouldn't do this. I'm in for a very difficult life, and like you know I understand the care and concern that they have because they are looking at this from the logical and objective side of statistics. And when you look at it that way, they're not wrong. They really aren't. For every successful actor you see, there are absolutely hundreds of thousands of failed actors. Um, but if you really are that hungry to pursue the creative side of things, then you need to learn to not only shrug off the negative criticism and reception, but the thing about it is don't have any sort of malice for them either, unless they're like, they're just being kind of abusive and just really, really, really huge jerks. But for the ones that just, kind of share their concerned thoughts, for the most part, they do it out of care. They don't want to see their own, family or close friends, folks of that nature suffer. So it'd be one of those things where I would say learn to just take any sort of negative criticism where people are trying to crush your dreams and just, put it in a corner where you say they're only saying this because they care. That's it. And it kind of demonizes them a little less because not everybody who says that is doing it with mean intentions. They just, at the end of the day, you only have one life and they don't want to see you suffer. Because like I said, this is absolutely a grueling field. So learn to just, roll with the punches, do what you want, but be mindful of why it is that people are saying the things that they are saying. And also just be a little more calculated in your decisions too. Don't just impulse is kind of nice, but at the same time, don't just impulsively do things. Try to think things out also. Be rational to a degree. Let the heart take you where it may, but, listen to that brain a little bit. Let's see. Names like that. Yep. So, fantastic advice. Wish we could pin that to voice chat. Yeah. You'll have to get a transcript of this and take the bits that you like. Maybe the Western side of the VA industry should do what Japan does and have you be cast for life so that you never get replaced unfairly. Yeah, I don't know so much about it. At the same time, there are a lot of decisions that go into why folks are either replaced or that production companies have the idea of just having casts constantly revolve. It's not necessarily unfairly replaced every time. I definitely know there is absolutely unfairly replaced sometimes, but there is a lot of things that go up in the higher up side that just you and I will never get to be a fly in the wall of those conversations. So we'll never know. When dealing with burnout or a drought, what's some go-to ways you like to refocus or keep busy? So what I personally like to do, and it kind of changed as things went on, but the main thing is kind of looking at the things that you have put into the career so far, trying to at least acknowledge that you are taking those steps, and for those of my peers, and this is where the advice is going to start varying a little bit. So to my industry professionals who have credits to their names and find themselves hitting that wall of doubt, especially with newer faces coming in and taking lead roles that you feel you would be right for and that you're being forgotten, things of that nature. The thing that I would say to them is look at your resume, look at your IMDb, just look at your accomplishments and don't forget that you got what you got because of your merit and that you are no less the person that you are now than you were when you were on a roll. This is one of those things where it's this too shall pass, roll with the punches. It sucks, but there is nobody in this world that just has it so good to the point where they themselves don't end up with a little bit of a rut. So that's what I would say to to my peers that have the credits and whatnot. To those who are a little on the greener side, what I would do in terms of burnout or drought is sometimes I would just stop doing auditions. Because at the end of the day, what good is sending in an audition when you have burnout? Your auditions aren't going to be great. You're sending it with some negative energy behind it. You may not think it necessarily will read on the mic, but in some cases it does. So it's absolutely okay to just step away from your auditions that you're getting and just say, I'm going to spend the next week or two just not doing it. Go and just try and rekindle your joy for why it is that you joined the field, or just forget about the industry as a whole for a little bit. Go ahead and just enjoy your music. Take walks outside. Watch movies, TV shows. Just do literally anything that you used to find joy in, and just try and just forget about it. Now, for voice actors, I will admit it's a little harder because you watching your shows that you love and playing the games that you love and whatnot. You're looking at it. You're just very much so being like, well, how am I supposed to take a break from this when I'm being reminded every single waking moment that I'm not doing the thing I want to do? To which case, just try and find another hobby. I can tell you, in terms of myself, when I was in those points, I spent a lot of time just listening to music. I personally had a diary of sorts, or a thought journal, if you will. I don't care what you want to call it, where I would just vent my frustrations. And, I'd rely on my girlfriend or my best friends. I'd vent, I'd rant, get it all off my chest, and just find ways to cope. But yeah, just try to find the joy in things and just leave. There's, like I said before, take a break, because there's absolutely nothing to be gained from continuing work when you're already burned out, because the quality of your work is just going to decrease. So take those breaks. Let's see. What exactly do you do when you say production or production side of things? Does that include sound mixing, translation, and localization? So me specifically, I gave the director and the talent coordinator side of my production, but legitimately I do handle quite a bit. So the full length of what I do is, so for talent coordination, there is sort of like an umbrella of things that happens there. I think it's not just a matter of getting the talents and getting the actors and reaching out to them, reaching out to agents and getting them on the slot. Sometimes I have to do negotiations as well. Kind of like contract negotiations with rates. Some people want more, some people feel rates are unfair, and it's just like, okay, let's see what we can work out. But then there is actual production meetings as well. So I'm responsible for kind of keeping track of the various projects that we have, making sure that deadlines are going to be hit, having small meetings with the other directors at the company, having meetings with our clients where they discuss with me what it is that they're looking for, what their budget looks like, and me going and having this sort of like back and forth, trying to figure out what we can do to give them the thing that they want with the budget that they want. That includes meetings with Funimation. I've had meetings with those folks, among various other clients as well. So there's a sort of like semi-financial aspect of this on top of the meetings. And then there's also deadlines as well. In terms of audio engineering itself, I also kind of dabble in that, but only on an as needed basis. I'm not too fond of doing it myself because I already do enough. So yeah. Oh yeah, sorry. I didn't realize about the amount of time. I don't know why I thought it was like a 2-hour thing. Regardless, I'm totally down to finish answering questions after. But I'll try and be a little more concise with my answers. But yeah, in terms of the production side, I kind of deal with talking to clients, getting together the script writers, the time coders, making sure that everything is in order, making sure the deadlines are going to be hit. If there's anything that's wrong, I'm generally the line of communication between clients and the directors. So I'm the middleman of a lot of things. on top of like me actually just directing. I handle that. Let's see. Question. Do you think you need to live in US and especially bigger cities like Los Angeles and New York to have a professional voice acting career? So I don't necessarily think you have to, and this is of course me talking in a COVID climate era right now. I don't think you necessarily need to live in a bigger city like Los Angeles and New York. And also New York isn't one of the greatest cities to live in for voiceover, weirdly enough. It's great for theater and they have some camera and voiceover may be growing, but I mean, LA is kind of like the voiceover. And of course there's some scattered in like Texas and Georgia and there are a few other things, but I think living outside of the country is definitely a hard sell. There are people who are making it happen, and it's a lot more prevalent in the indie scene. But I definitely have a bunch of friends who are foreign to this market, and they are having the hardest of times. And that's just because, you know, time zones are a thing. Most professional studios, while there are exceptions to the rules, they do like to try and have a sort of like 9 to 5 sort of schedule. Like I said, exceptions to the rules are made. You'll absolutely find studios going till 12 in the morning, 1 in the morning, but it is a tougher sell, mainly even just because, not just because of time zones, but time zones are definitely a big thing. And also like, you know, getting people into a studio in case their audio setup just doesn't work, much easier when you're in these States than orchestrating it overseas. So yeah, you might find a little bit difficulty living in the US. I'm not going to say you have to, but it will make life easier. But I don't think you necessarily have to make a jump to one of the bigger cities. Let's see. Do you have any brief suggestions for one's initial application to an agency? Yes. Be concise. Only explain relevant information. Similar to what I said in my thing with the studios, is a similar thing that you would want to send to agencies, in my personal opinion. So being like, hey there, my name is so-and-so. Would appreciate any sort of consideration to being part of your roster. My vocal quality is this. This is my current equipment. Here is my resume. If there's anything else you need, let me know and I'd be more than happy to provide it. Sincerely, or, you know, thanks for your time and consideration, so-and-so. So keep it relevant to things that you think they would need to know. And if you're foreign or if you have an ethnicity that you know is kind of sought after, then you absolutely would want to put that. It says my vocal quality is this. I'm a professional Middle Eastern voice actor. I happen to be able to do accents. You know, kind of like that bullet point list where an agency doesn't want or have time to read everything. So put the important information by the top. And then if you really, really want to give like an introduction, I would say put it somewhere toward the middle where it's just like, hey there, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, you want to just kind of be concise with what you have. What's your favorite so bad it's good movie, as in a movie that you like regardless of its quality or because it's a guilty pleasure for you, like The Room or almost any Adam Sandler movie for the past 15 years? Mine's The Mask by Jim Carrey. That's mine. Although I guess I would also argue that it's so good it's good. I don't think it's a bad movie, but I definitely know people will argue otherwise. Which careers or jobs are related to voice acting or the creative aspect of it that maybe could be done online in case voice acting related doesn't work for me here in Bolivia? Truly, I'm not entirely sure. I feel like you can definitely find something in the production aspect, such as the audio engineering, if you want to just kind of be able to be a fly on the wall in sessions and hearing how things are done and how professionals may handle things. In terms of being done fully online, that's a little bit of a harder sell because with a lot of these creatives and higher ups, there is definitely a difficult barrier of entry to kind of just entering any sort of creative aspects. So I'm actually not too sure what can be done online that are related to voice acting or the creative aspect. Now, that's not to say like you can try and find things such as indie projects and whatnot that you may be able to help a part of on the production side. You may be able to try and make a name for yourself for casting or directing, or I don't know. There are other things, or even writing. Script writing is a huge thing too. If you wanted to stay on the creative side, but in order to just straight up do it online and get a resume, that's a little harder to do and is not something that I fully know how to answer, to be truthful. But yeah, that looks like I'm caught up on a lot of the questions. Oh, so I'm really new to voice acting, but I have done some small gigs for in-person acting. For what are the difference between the two? So in-person acting. So if you're talking about camera or theater, because even those are different, and I'll kind of just hit the sort of similarities and differences between the three. So voice acting is a matter of being able to give a full-on performance while being restrained in one position. You may be able to move your upper body, and of course, I'm not talking about. I know you can make exceptions to the rules and say you can talk about mocap and facial capture and all this other stuff, but we'll just keep it to you're behind a microphone. So for that sort of voice acting, it's a matter of giving a full body performance while keeping still, essentially. Your feet have to be planted. You can move your upper body, you can be physical within degrees, but you need to be able to just hit all levels of emotion. In a scene, if a best friend dies in the scene, you need to be able to hit those emotional highs. If you are joyous because the love of your life just said yes, you need to be able to hit those emotions. If you are seething with anger because you have been backstabbed and I don't know, someone has died as a result, all of that needs to be done in one position. So in a way, it's kind of like theater acting. Voice acting and theater acting, I think, are very, very similar. The only difference is you are taking the full-on performance of trying to encapsulate and fill an entire auditorium and stage all behind a microphone. And that's kind of difficult to do. But it is definitely, I think, a transferable skill, kind of just honing all of that energy and bringing it just to a stillness, but still keeping the energy up. And then in terms of camera acting, it's very similar to voice in that the camera captures a lot of things. Any little nuance that your face does, the camera captures. And as a result, you need to learn how to restrict movement of your face and your body, making sure that anything that you do is only done with purpose. You can't move your facial structure way too much because you start looking like a caricature, is really what it ends up happening on camera. So there's that level of physical restraint that has to happen on camera because it's another form of like intimate recording. It's very intimate acting. The camera will come up to you when it needs to. It will be as far away as it needs to, and you need to just ignore it. Just pretend that you are living in that moment. So camera and voice are similar because it's very personal in terms of the style of acting. And then voice and theater are very similar because they bring the same level of sort of energy that you would need to have in terms of performance. And then camera and theater is the same thing as voice and theater, in which you need to learn to bring that sort of level of energy, but having that sort of like physical restriction. I know you probably were asked this question a lot, but how did you discover voice acting for the first time? I was getting my theater degree, and I ended up just realizing that, it was like I was just watching cartoons and playing video games, and I realized, oh wait, these are all actors. That's something that I can do, and I don't have to be a 6'3", 6-pack chiseled looking individual in order to be able to book stuff. So the more and more the physical aspect was being relieved from requirements, the more and more I delved into voiceover. And that's kind of like what led the ball rolling into my pursuit.
Really quick before we move on here, it is about to be 4 o'clock here. But it's totally up to you. I think we might have 1 or 2 more coming in the pipeline here if you want to take care of them, or if you want to call it here, it's totally up to you. So just let me know what you want.
Oh, no, I'm totally cool waiting and seeing what the couple are. Yeah, no worries at all. The more I do this, the less I have to, the less time I have to spend going back to working. Like I said, it's a 24/7 job. It just does not stop. Related to theater and camera work, my professor has been trying to convince me to try out. What are some Bay Area theater or camera productions you'd recommend looking into? I actually can't answer that because I am currently a Dallas native. So what I can tell you as general advice that I would do is I would look up Facebook groups. I would look up just sort of between Facebook, Actors Access, and Backstage, although I think Backstage is probably a little worse, but Actors Access is probably going to be a better tool. I think there's another site called Casting Frontier. You'll be able to kind of look into some more camera work. But Facebook groups are a wonder also. You have a lot of these theater and just acting communities on Facebook for your areas that you can probably find and get the questions that you need answered. Also, Reddit is probably a decent tool. You can probably look into R acting. There may or may not be people who can answer it, but yeah, I would try searching for online groups, especially considering that right now a lot of discussion has moved to online thanks to the current climate. What do you recommend for those who are just starting to voice act? What would you recommend for those struggling to get their first paid gig? I would recommend taking classes. I know it sucks to hear, but learn. So here's a couple of things, actually. I lied. I know exactly what I would say. I would say learn to take an improv class and also look into commercial voiceover classes. A lot of people think that voice acting is just a matter of doing zany, cartoony voices and that everybody can be the next, like Scooby-Doo and stuff. And the fact of the matter is, a lot more of voice acting lies in the commercial field as well. And so there are people that don't want to accept or hone that skill in. Doing commercial reads is a very particular skill, and making it sound natural, realistic, and being able to sell a product is a skill that you need to learn if you have never done it before. So I would say for those starting to voice act, look into classes, whether it be improv, whether it be commercial voice acting. I'd actually probably, if you were just like straight up green, no acting whatsoever, try and look into more general theater classes or just general acting classes. And then from there, kind of start honing in on, okay, I want to do voiceover. So now let me find a voiceover coach or let me find voiceover classes. Learn to act, then learn to voice act and start going into those niches. And for those struggling to get their first paid gig, I would say honestly, be objective about the quality of your work. Is it actually good? I know it's very difficult to ascertain that. And I know that people who are supportive of you may not necessarily be honest, but use the tools that you have, such as Voice Acting Club. Go to Reddit can be brutal, but I mean, it does exist. Ask people that you would trust to critique your work. And if it really can use work, you probably need to take more classes. Obviously, classes aren't the catch-all, end-all, be-all, but it is definitely how you hone your skills in order to get better. For those who are absolutely certain that their skills are awesome and they know that they deserve those gigs or whatever, you need to start looking into getting some sort of a demo done, not necessarily professionally, but you need to get a reel. So, something to showcase your work so that if you are applying to a studio, you can be like, hey, I'm so-and-so. Also, here's how my voice sounds. You can absolutely stitch that together and, hopefully you start landing stuff. If that isn't an option for you, you need to look into resources with what an old agent of mine called decision makers. So you have a lot of casting directors, you have a lot of influencers in the field, a lot of directors who teach classes, and taking workshops with them are another way of kind of looking into what it is that those industry professionals are looking for when they're hiring people. But I would only recommend those if you are absolutely certain that you are actually, and like that, and that you're being objective when you say you are a good actor, because there are absolutely those who think that they're good or are told that they're good, but absolutely need to work a little bit more on it. And that's not to say that you can't accomplish the goal, but it is a very, very varied field with varied individuals of varied skill sets and skill levels. What are considered VA faux pas? Let's see. So what I would say are, professionally speaking, especially with remote recording, if you can't hear a director or if the line is weird and you're not able to hear anything, be sure to don't be afraid to tell the directors or anything if something is wrong. Another thing is, don't kill yourself for a gig. If you happen to wake up and you have a 102-degree fever, don't like email the people, cancel, get it rescheduled. Do not think that this is an unbendable field. Everyone is human. In terms of more particulars, doing impressions is not impressive. Yes, there are definitely some that are cool to hear, and some definitely get work based off of their impressions. But at the end of the day, most of what you're going to book, and this is like as a whole, not for the exceptions, will be using something right around plus minus a little bit of your natural voice. So don't spend too much time trying to get your Gollums and your Goofies and your Stewie Griffins. No one actually really cares about them. I certainly don't. Sorry. And the other thing I would say is don't geek out in public in front of the directors too hard. Like if you get your first gig and it's like, a really, really cool gig, obviously a lot of people here are into anime. So if you manage to get a gig for anime and whatnot, learn to be professional. Like show up to the studio, get into the thing, say yes. If you have questions, ask them. That is a big thing that people feel they can't do when you absolutely can. Because if you don't ask questions and you aren't getting the thing, you're only going to make the production side of things a little more frustrating for them. It's a collaborative effort. So make sure to voice any sort of concerns you may have. You don't understand a direction, ask for clarification, things like that. Say your thank yous and leave, and wait till you get home before you start saying, "Oh my God, I'm in Dragon Ball!" It's like don't save it for behind closed doors. As you become more and more inducted in the field, you can start geeking out over different projects that you're in and saying, "Oh my God, I love this thing" and whatnot. But I think restraint definitely goes a long way, because people don't want to. Fandoms are kind of a little toxic and whatnot sometimes, and professionals. There's a certain level of gatekeeping that happens to people who they view as just fans versus those who are professionals that also happen to be fans. So try and keep the geeking out to a little more restrained is all. That's not to say don't be excited. Just, be reasonable. And don't show up to your first gig in cosplay. Let's see. 10 years ago, I did theater, and I'd like to do VA and film now that my life is settled. Is a demo the best way to go, or should I be getting small jobs like on Backstage be a priority? I would work on... So it kind of depends. What I would probably do, actually what I did do, was I would start with looking at colleges. I would look at colleges in the nearby area and try seeing what you could do with student films. And in terms of online, using tools like Voice Acting Club would be able to get your foot into some kind of like indie gigs. And from there, even though it's all quote unquote non-professional, depending on who you ask, mainly talking on the student films, that is, once you hit a certain level of like confidence as well as like a little bit of a resume, I would say your next step is definitely trying to see if you can put together a demo, because a demo is supposed to showcase what your abilities are, and that's kind of like the voice actor business card, if you will. People want to see what it is you're capable of doing, so demos are the way to do that. But yeah, I would first go about trying to get the small jobs. Let that be a priority. Build up the confidence, build up experience, even if it's just with students or it's, like I said, more amateur productions. You're not going to be booking off on like Insomniac Games as projects on the get-go. So build yourself up, look into a small demo, try to get more work, then get another demo of more professional quality. It's kind of like a back and forth that you'll have to play a sort of ping pong. But again, it varies per individual. So please use your absolute best judgment, because there are people that get a lot of demos and aren't going to necessarily get more work. So demos aren't necessarily the end all be all. You just need one good one to get your foot through doors at the very least, but only do that when you have the experience. Did someone actually show up to a voice acting session in cosplay? Not in my studio, but I've definitely heard of people like coming up in like, you know, fuller regalia. And, you know, it kind of depends on the mood of the day also. You know, sometimes it's more like, oh, that was kind of fun. That was cool. But more often than not, it is definitely going to be seen with a sort of stigma where it's just like, oh, this person is just like a huge fan that managed to get an opportunity, but that's kind of just weird. Okay, nah. And yeah, Halloween, of course, being an exception, but yeah, reserve judgment. Treat a gig professionally. That's not to say that you have to show up in slacks and a dress shirt, but you know, you're there to work. You're not there to be a fan. Suit and tie, I would say, is excessive. Keep if you really want, and that's like your shtick, by all means, you do you, but definitely excessive.
All right. Well, hey, thank you. I mean, that looks like everything. So thank you so much for coming in today. Thank you so much for spending your Saturday with us and answering all these questions. If you have any like your material that you want to promote, feel free to post that in the chat. But any closing thoughts you might have before we all start filing out here? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, number one, first and foremost, thanks to everybody who took the time to actually listen. I do highly appreciate that you guys, you know, stuck around for this. Hopefully you gained something. In terms of my own promotion, I mean, there's my Twitter. I guess I can like link that. But aside from that, I don't really have much self-promotion to do. In terms of closing thoughts, the only thing I will want to say is remember, be kind to yourself. For any of you who are aspiring VAs, or for those of you that are hardened veterans that are finding yourselves in, you know, difficult situations, or even to those who are just already just in really good places. Take things one step at a time. Be thankful definitely for what you've got. Take your breaks when you need to. Take care of yourself first and foremost. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And also, while yes, it is a cutthroat industry, it is not one that you need to be going against your friends for. Learn to lift each other up. At the end of the day, you should be happy when a friend books a role over you, because at the end of the day, at least it went to somebody you know, at least it went to somebody that you feel would do justice to the thing. Jealousy and envy, while it is an understandable human emotion to have, don't let it run you. But yeah, just take it easy, one step at a time, and just keep doing your best. Yeah.
Well, once again, thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. More than happy to have been brought along to do this.
Hope to see you around here some more.
Absolutely. Everyone, you all have a fantastic day and night and evening. And there's my Twitter, just for the only shameless promotion that I will do. But yeah, y'all have a good one.